VBS,
How did he do that? He must have done it.
Check out this meeting. is
wait a minute.
recorded. It's supposed to. Just-
Have you got it recording, Robert? Okay.
just got it.
All right.
Okay, VBS is still scheduled for July the 5th through the 9th, 6 to 8 p.m. for children in kindergarten through 6th grade in the fall. That will be in kindergarten through 6th grade in the fall. Pre-register at ccdfw.org/children. New members class is scheduled for June the 13th and September the 12th. Any new members wishing to sign up can meet in the encourager room to let Jeremy know if you are interested. I do, you do. Do you have the desire to lead a new class about marriage? Please contact Pastor Jeremy for more information. So anybody that wants to lead a class about marriage?
About marriage,
I'm
I'm still learning.
Movies by Moonlight, June the 18th. It's going to be Minions, okay? This summer, we will be bringing back Movies by Moonlight and hope you will invite your neighbors. We will bring out the big screen on our church lawn to enjoy great movies by moonlight with your friends and families. Even on a hot day, it is nice on the lawn. Okay. This free showing is open to the community. So bring your lawn chairs, your blanket, and maybe your favorite movie candy as we fellowship together with popcorn and water will be provided. And then summer events, June the 21st to the 25th is Kids Camp at Riverbend for grades 3 through 5. Middle school, July the 5th through July the 9th. High school camp will be June the 27th through July the 2nd. And VBS Destination Dig will be July the 5th through July the 9th. And then we have Movies by Moonlight on June the 18th, which will be Minions. July the 9th will be National Treasure. July the 23rd will be Angels in the Outfield. And August the 13th, Sing. So that is all of the announcements. So I have a card here from Miss Donna Teal. And it's a thank you to Legacy Builders. Thank you for the kind memorial gift in Sammy's memory. He loved all of you and building together Cross Church. And that's love from the Teal family. We love him too. Thank you. Okay, any prayer requests that we have or any updates to our prayer request? I will just say for my family that I seem to have everybody on there. My youngest sister and her husband made it back to Granbury. That's where they're moving from Creed to. They're glad to be back here in Texas. I know they're going to miss Creed. That was the place where they wanted to be, and they built a beautiful home there. But COVID came along, and they had to get out of the altitude, so they're back here. So we're glad to have them, but I know they're going to miss it. So, yes, sir.
Update on Donna from Robert.
You want to give us an update, Robert, on how Donna's doing this morning?
She had a much better night last night, and we have the green light to go home today. So I think they were going to actually let us go this morning, but we had already ordered lunch. And anyway, we're staying through lunch and then be heading out to go home. But she is progressing well. She's worked with a physical therapist here, occupational therapist, and I think her left leg looks better than her right leg did after the surgery first go around. But I'm not a doctor, but anyway, just my take on that. But anyway, she's coming along, and it's recovery is going to take a while with 2 impacted legs. But anyway, thank you so much for your prayers, and really grateful for that.
Okay. I'm glad that she's doing better. Yeah. All right. Beg your pardon? Well, we did get information from Barbara, and she asked that we not continue with the meals. Ray's not eating that much, and so she's really not having to fix that much. So she asked us, she appreciated it, and she just wanted us to continue with our prayers, basically, for she and Pastor Ray. So
I don't know how much of this is known by the class, but Betty shared with me that she's talked to Barbara. And their thinking is that they're going to try to sell home and move into some type of, I guess it's like assisted living facility. And that'll probably work out better for the care for Ray and all of that. And they will have the responsibility of taking care of the household.
yeah,
We're headed up to Oklahoma tomorrow. We've sold my folks' home place,
oh,
and
okay.
I never lived there, but my sister did. And I left 50 years ago. My sister married a local guy, and so she was there every day checking on folks. And so it's much more emotional for her. But we're getting all the stuff out, and so we can turn it over to the new buyers and the new people, which I think will be a thing. It's a small town Oklahoma, so it's a
Yeah. Good deal. Well, I missed seeing Miss Berta last week because I wasn't here, but it's nice to see you back. Okay. Donna.
My granddaughter is coming back from church camp in Colorado, and the boys are leaving today for Colorado.
Oh, okay.
Switch different age groups, but I always worry about those buses.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
drivers.
yeah. Okay. Well, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you that we can come together as a class to study your word and to prepare our lives according to what you would have us do. I pray for those that are sick, those that have gone through surgeries, Donna, and glad that she is doing better. Lord, I hope that we can have a great time of study here this morning as Will leads us. In your son's precious name, I pray. Amen.
Also, we have Joy Sticks with us. She
Joyce.
is nice to meet also.
All right.
And
All right.
totally scare her away.
That's good. Well, I wasn't here, so.
You have to excuse.
Okay, all right.
Hi, Robert. Can you hear us?
I don't know why we lost the computer.
It's okay. It won't hear me.
Computer problems are nothing new under the sun, right?
They are nothing new under the sun. I was telling Tommy that I had problems on this end because it was weird. I had tested yesterday since we're at the hospital, and it was no problem. Worked fine. But laptops have to update every once in a while, so it needed to update. And anyway, long story short, I had re-sign in. It worked fine. So, but you heard what he was talking about, the problem at the church.
Yes, he said that they were having issues.
Yeah, the TV, apparently they had to completely reboot the television. And, obviously something else is going on with the Wi-Fi there. So I don't know what happened. I'm gonna stay on just in case, give them some time. They may figure something out, but if not, it's what it is. So. You all got the word that we started in Ecclesiastes.
I saw that on the green slip
Yeah.
and I thought, oh, here we go. Because I was already looking up in Job.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's interesting. There you go.
Turn sideways. So that he starts off in life evidently being a pretty devout guy, but as he continued to get richer and he married more foreign wives and it, I think I heard a goose.
If that doesn't distract you, nothing will. There you go. If that doesn't distract you, nothing will.
Nothing will.
There you go.
But, you know, Solomon says, hey, generations come and generations go. I mean, you know, many generations that lived before us, the chances are there's going to be many generations of people to live after us. And nobody's ever escaped death except for Jesus. Of course, and he died. He just came back in 3 days. We could be so fortunate. But as the pastor said this morning, for a Christian, to be absent from this life is to be present with the Lord. So that's certainly going to be a lot better thing. But, you know, I think Solomon's pretty well saying, hey, what do people pursue in finding a meaning for life? What do people do? What do they try to accumulate? I used to call it the 3 Ps. Possessions, positions, and passions.
You got it.
Usually what we're trying to do in life is to gather possessions or to get in good positions, or we have passions about things. Now, it could be love passions, it could be passions about sports, it could be passions about building an empire or something, you know. But Ecclesiastes begins, vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity, all is hovel. The word there in the Hebrew is hovel. It just means it's like smoke. It's
vapor, breath. It's just temporary. It's fleeting. There's not any real satisfaction in all these things. I don't know if you've ever known some very wealthy people. Sometimes very wealthy people are not very happy people. Sometimes there are. I've got a couple of 2 or 3 good Christian friends in the Philippines that are enormously wealthy, but they're also very good Christian friends, and they really use their wealth in very good ways, far and above any worry about tithe, stuff like that. I mean, they just, one of my friends has started several schools for kids that are too poor to go to school. And he finances the whole thing, even feeds them, buys their books, and provides all the teachers and everything. He just loves doing that. I think and he's got one now, but the COVID kind of slowed that down, so, and COVID's still not doing real well over there in the Philippines. But, the big question, what does a person gain for all of his efforts? And you notice that the teacher Solomon here uses this under the sun. So all the times you're going to see all this under the sun. He's just saying on earth, what happens to all these things that he labors for here on earth? And his idea is it's just vanity. He says life is fleeting and temporary. The world's been around for next to forever, and it's going to be around a whole lot longer, but we're just going to be here a little bitty time compared to the whole scope of history and what's going to be. Earth just continues to turn, and we're here for a little while and then go. He said all these efforts to build and accumulate is just like, he called it chasing the wind. I haven't ever caught the wind, but I've had a couple of dust devils out in West Texas to run over me. But about all I got was the dust, the air you couldn't get a hold of. It doesn't work that way. But he said that he tried education, he tried intellectual endeavors. He just tried to discover the meaning of life, and it said he finally basically comes to the conclusion that it's beyond being able to get a hold of. It's just like a vapor. He said he found pleasures in possessions and things. He talks about the delight of the sons of man. He's talking about things that please people on earth. But he said they all end up in disappointment. There's not really any lasting satisfaction in possessions or pleasures, passions. And he even says that when one dies, what's going to happen to all of it? What's going to go to somebody else, and you don't have any control over it. You don't know what they're going to do. They may just decide to go to Vegas and blow it all in a weekend. You don't know what's going to happen to all your possessions. So he said, why spend all your time worrying about it? And the more you get, the more you worry about it. It's just like talking about Ray and them maybe going in and sell the house and move into an apartment. You just think, if you own a house, think how much time you spend just on taking care of your house. I mean, not just the matter of sweeping and cleaning and all, but then repairs. I mean, the toilet leaks, faucet leaks, a light switch goes out, lamp breaks, there's always something, you know, and the more house you have, the more somethings you got to take care of. And you know, it's almost make you think that it'd be better just to have like a little place with 3 rooms or something, you know, a kitchen and kind of a family room area and a living room area and a bedroom area. And that's, you know, of course you need a bathroom there somewhere. But of course, it'd be like my granddad's always had an outhouse. So.
We bought a house and we bought the house for the house, just happened to have a swimming pool in the backyard. Well, I've been out there working on that swimming pool every day.
Yes.
And I've yet to be in the swimming pool. But I have to do something to it every day. I'm about to determine it's more trouble than it's worth.
A swimming pool is by definition, it's a hole in the ground you pour money into. It's kind of like a boat. That's a hole in the water you pour money into. I got a buddy that was offering to sell me his very nice fishing boat. And I decided at almost 80 years old, I didn't need to be going out in a fishing boat by myself, and everybody else is too busy to go with me. So, anyway, let's just take a look at some of what what Solomon says here. That's a little bit closer. We're in chapter 1, really, and verse 12 to 15. He talks about, again, I, the preacher, he's talking about himself, Solomon, and he introduces himself, been king over Israel in Jerusalem. So that's one reason we know it's Solomon. And he said he's got a quest. He said, I've applied my heart to do what? To seek and to search out wisdom, by wisdom, all that is done under the heavens. Well, you know, Solomon was probably one of the smartest guys that's ever lived. He had a lot of godly wisdom early on in his career. It seems he turned away from that godly wisdom and just was trying to, and here he's not talking about godly wisdom as much in Ecclesiastes. He's talking about earthly, worldly wisdom. And he said, I'm using my earthly, worldly wisdom and trying to search out the meaning of everything that's done under the heavens. And he just says, it's an unhappy business. It's an unhappy business that God's given to the children of men to be busy with. He said, I've seen everything that's done under the sun, and behold, it's all vanity. It's all striving with the wind. You just can't get a hold of it. And why is that so? Does he tell us why? Look at that last verse there, 15. He said, because what's crooked can't be made straight, and what's lacking can't be counted. You know, Robert and I and some other, we've worked a lot overseas. The Philippines is kind of a third world country, and probably, I'd say 80% of the people live off less per month than the average American makes in a day. In fact, I think I read, maybe it was just looking through the first few pages of the commentary, it's made something about the statement that about 40% of the world's people live on $2 or less per month. How would you like to live on $2? Well, you know, $2 in the Philippines goes quite a bit further than $2 in the US. But even if you multiplied that by $20, you know, up to $20 for a month. Wow. no way. But that's how a lot of the world lives. And Solomon's saying, so many of us, we collect all these things. Some of the happiest people I've known, though, were some of those poor people that just didn't have anything other than a bunch of kids to eat them out, and maybe a carabao and a few chickens or a goose or something like that, and that's about their whole worldly possession, huh?
A pig.
Yeah, a pig, and most of the time the pig was tied up kind of in a harness thing, tied to a post around the house or something, and they fed it, but until it got big and fat. And then they might cook it. But, he just says all this. If you look through all the wisdom literature, what does it say is the foundation of all real human wisdom? Just think back through Proverbs, Job. Job's probably the oldest written book in the Bible, probably contemporary about with Abraham, long before Moses wrote the Pentateuch. But the conclusion that most of these wisdom literatures come to is that the fear of the Lord is the basis for wisdom. And so the basis for wisdom is not what you got. It's where you're going. And so that's, this all striving for the wind, working for things, as Solomon says, under the sun, really brings no lasting satisfaction. And Solomon's finally he just says, hey, what's crooked about this world? You can't straighten it out. There are crooked things happening all the time. I mean, we've all seen good people suffer for no good reason, but they get clobbered. And we kind of scratch our heads and wonder, well, why would the good Lord let that happen to somebody? They've never hurt anybody. They've never done anything bad to anybody. And yet they just it just seems like they're snake bit. They just keep on bad things happening. And what's lacking, sometimes I think modern day, a lot of young people, what's lacking is good sense. I mean, really, the commercial world has done such a great job of brainwashing people that you got to have the latest iPhone, you got to have a new car, you got to have the big brick house, you got to have, and their friends, and it's almost one of these things where everybody's chasing the tail in front of them, and they're just going round and round in a circle, digging a deeper and deeper rut. A rut that's a grave with both ends kicked out, and that's what happens to them. They end up, oh, my friends are all going to go to Colorado and go skiing and all, and they want me to go, and I just so get out the credit card. A new iPhone's come out and everybody's getting the latest. Get out the credit card. All my buddy bought this nice house, and we're still living in an apartment, and well, it's not all. I don't think you can get the credit card and buy a house, but you can sure get yourself in a ton of debt with payments that you can't hardly meet. And then guys end up working 2 jobs, the husband and wife working, and kids end up neglected. I mean, it's just, what's crooked can't be made straight, and you know, you ought to know better, but you end up getting into often so much debt you can't handle it. And then all the strain that puts on the relationships and just blows up. So, this is kind of the tension of living life under the sun. And it doesn't always make sense, and we can't always fix it. And the longings of the teacher there in Ecclesiastes starts getting us an insight that there must be something that would bring satisfaction beyond this life. And a lot of folks believe that, Proverbs was probably written while Solomon was young, and he started having his first kids and family, and he's writing this to his son that he's hoping is going to inherit his kingdom and do well. And so he's trying to give him wisdom. But Ecclesiastes, they think, probably was written as an old man. And now he's looking back. And all of these things he's tried to build up and accomplish in his kingdom, he's not found any satisfaction in it. And he's come to some conclusions in life that basically, hey, you ought to just be satisfied with what God gives you. Relax and enjoy it. Because whatever you get comes from God. He says God is the author of it. So, there is for Christians, especially today, Solomon lived a long time before Jesus. So he didn't have the benefit we have of looking back, but we know that there is a wisdom that doesn't lead to despair. And for those that come to know Christ and to live for him and accept his way, then we have that hope for a life hereafter that's going to be, well, in fact, it's described, we're going to have that great supper of the Lamb. We're going to have there's going to be eating and drinking in the new life and the new world, and we're going to have it be in the presence of God, and it's all going to be okay. That world to come, instead of worrying about this world and all the things that we could want and have and do to accomplish things that we want here. Solomon just says, if you go down to chapter 2 and verse 18, he says, I hated all my toils in which I toiled under the sun. He built all of this stuff, built up the city of Jerusalem, of course, built the temple, built all these fortified cities around, had all these armies that he built up, all the military might and presence, had all these people coming from all over the world, paying him honors and all of this. And what he says, I hated all my toil in which I toiled under the sun, seeing that I must do what? Leave it to the man that comes after me. He accomplished all of this, and for what? Couldn't take any of it with him. He's just going to leave it, and who knows whether he'll be wise or a fool. Yeah. He might take it and really invest it and work with it and develop it and use it for good things. But then he might, like I said, fly out to Vegas and blow it all in a weekend. Will he be wise or a fool? Yet he's going to be the master of everything you toiled for. What Solomon concludes. So this also is vanity. He says this also is just troubled, is the word that he used there. So he said, I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toils of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skills must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone that didn't toil for it. So this also is vanity. It kind of makes you wonder, why do you get up in the morning and go to work? Or did you, if you're retired like we are? Why did you get up and go to work? Well, I don't know. You know, one thing in our publishing company, I enjoyed being with the people. I enjoyed seeing things get done, you know, and being a part of getting things done. And I think a lot of people, you know, hopefully had a job that they liked. I've always told my boys, you know, to find something that you really enjoy doing, and then find somebody that'll pay you a living salary to do it. And then you never have to go to work. You just get to go do what you love to do. And you know, so, but, you know, we're always interested in what people do. You know, one of the first questions that you often think about asking when you meet new people is, what do you do? You know, want to know kind of what they do, because that tells you a little bit about who they are and how maybe to relate to them. And work is good. I mean, to do, man and woman, they worked in the garden. That was their job, to work and take care of the garden. Of course, I think it was a really nice garden and it didn't have weeds. You know how to tell the difference between a weed and a good plant? It's hard to pull a weed up. That's the easy way to tell between them. If you pull something up and it was easy to pull up, it probably was a good plant. Weeds are hard to pull up, but you know, work after the fall became a hard thing, and it was talked about in an agricultural perspective. Is now you try to work in your garden, and the weeds come up, the thorns, the thistles. And you're fighting that all the time in order to keep it out of the grain, so the grain will grow so that you can have bread to eat. But, you know, the teacher just says, hey, all this work you're doing, it's hovel. It's vanity. It's like smoke. It really doesn't end up meaning anything at the end of life. You can't take it with you. But again, we know from a Christian perspective that one day all this curse over the earth is going to be totally removed. And if you go back into Revelation, there's going to be a new heavens and a new earth. And it's going to be an earth that's like the Garden of Eden all around. Not just one little patch someplace.
And no weeds.
Huh?
And no weeds.
No weeds, no grass burrs.
Hopefully no fire ants.
Yes, no fire ants. You know, the fire ants really, well, not necessarily fire ants. I guess that was cut ants. We used to call them cut ants. I don't know. I picked up a bale of hay one time, had it in my arms like that, and started feeling things all over me, and threw the hay bale down. And then cut ants would give a signal, it seems like, and at the same time, all of them would sting. And I peeled out of my t-shirt and rubbing, ants had just run all over me from that bale of hay. And that's not fun. Fortunately, all I had to peel out of it was my t-shirt. So, of course, it was out in the hay field, so it wouldn't matter if I'd had to shuck my jeans. But anyway, they didn't get off. Since I picked it up in my arm, it just got on my my head and chest and arms and all. So, but we're not going to have those cut ants. We're not going to have those fire ants. We're not going to have those stickers in that life. And, you know, it's just that we're not going to worry a whole lot about these things that we accumulate. Yeah, I got a lot of things at my house that I like. I mean, I got wood carvings. I love wood. I've got rocks. I've got some arrowheads. There's just different odds and ends and things that I just kind of like. You know, what's going to happen to a lot of those things when I die? I don't know. My boys may just take a lot of that stuff to the dumpster, you know. But I kind of enjoy them, I think, now. But, you know, Sodom was just saying, hey, you know, he just felt despair with the fact that he could work and work and work and accomplish all of these things and build up all of these things and have all of this wealth and all these beautiful things that was he either made or were given to him as gifts and all of this because of his position as king and this wise man. And then everything that he had going to be left here. He's not going to benefit from any of it when he dies. It's all going to be gone.
They say that there's not a trailer hitch on a hearse. There's not a trailer hitch on a hearse.
There's not a trailer hitch on the hearse. You're not going to have a U-Haul trailer coming behind you to take all of your possessions. And even those, you know, the pharaohs and people that did it over the thousands of years, the archaeologists dig it up today, it's all still there. It didn't go anywhere. It just rotted and ruined. And that's about the end of it. You know, it's just that when Solomon, being so wise, looked at it, and, you know, he even said wisdom was bad in a way, because the wiser you are, what happens? The more you see about how messed up things are, you know, the wiser you are, the more you see about the injustices and the poverty and the suffering and everything, so that you know, if you just stayed pretty dumb and all you knew about was your family and this little bitty village back up in a mountain somewhere, you know, when you made a good crop and had plenty to eat and your kids were all healthy, life was good. And, you know, that's about the conclusion that Solomon goes to. If you go down to verse, I think it's chapter 2, verse 24 to 26, you have a reference there, one of the few references in the book of Ecclesiastes about God. It mentions God 2 or 3 times in these verses here. He says, there's nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. So Solomon says, instead of just working your proverbial tail off to try to get all this stuff and have this big bank account and have these big houses and all these cars and all this technical stuff and computers and cell phones and all of this, he said, just relax. Enjoy what God gives. Eat and drink and be happy when he gives it to you, and thank God for it. And don't worry about it. Don't work yourself to death. Don't work yourself into a nervous breakdown over all these things. But it's easier said than done, Tommy.
Were you looking at me just like she was?
We all tend to have worries about the things that we have, and you know, why did we pay all these years on insurance? You know, we have health insurance and life insurance, and accident insurance, and of course, what happens is these guys that do the insurance, they make all your money. So.
But this is the wisdom that we can gain from what Solomon did. I mean, the things that Solomon wrote about, we can get from his wisdom that our focus needs to be on God and what he's provided for us, not what we've provided for ourselves, but the abilities that God has given us to do what it is that he wants us to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we gain from that. We gain from studying him so that we can be, the wisdom that we have is from God, not from man.
Yeah, and Solomon lived a life like a lot of modern people did today. He just kept accumulating and working hard, and he had this great intellect. So I mean, he probably even started some schools or something for intellects, and he built all these things, and he organized. In fact, one of the things that he did, instead of paying attention to the 12 tribes of Israel, he ended up and developed 12 tax zones, so that you have 12 head taxmen over 12 zones to collect the taxes, because his empire took a lot of money. So, you know, he did all these things, and then he just decided all of it's like smoke. Just blow it out there. You try to grab it and it's nothing really there. There's no real value in material possessions. There's no real satisfaction in material possessions. That's what Solomon's finally coming to a conclusion. And he's kind of as probably the old man Solomon now, looking back on all he's done and realizing how futile all this stuff was. All these things that he spent all of his life trying to do and become and build and accumulate, and it really didn't mean anything. It's kind of like, boy, did I blow it. I just spent all this time and all this effort and all my great wisdom dumbly trying to do. And so he's just saying, you know, for apart from him, apart from God, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner, he's given the business of gathering and collecting. Why? Only to give it to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and striving after the wind. So he's just saying, hey, we should take care not to make the mistake of making a good thing, our possessions, the main thing, because they're not the main thing. I used to teach seminary. I taught a lot of Old Testament, but he's talking about creation. I'd say, well, before we got started, I'd say, what's more real? Material things or spiritual things?
Spiritual things, because they last forever.
Huh?
The spiritual things will last forever.
And God is a spirit, and he created all the material things. So what's more lasting? What's more real? What's more powerful? Well, it's certainly not the material things. And I think this is what Ecclesiastes is basically coming to. He's saying, hey, there's really no satisfaction. There's really no final lasting meaning to be found for life in things. But instead, look to God and be thankful for what he gives you and use it right. use it appropriately. Eat, drink, be merry, and thank God for it. And quit working yourself to death over something that you can't really say you can't. It's not really you can't. It's just really that it's not going to last. And it's not going to give you the happiness that you wish for. When I was in high school, it was really my cousin's friend, and his daddy owned a large ranch in South Texas. In fact, I worked on some oil wells on that guy's ranch. He had lots of oil wells. So they were very, 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 very wealthy. That boy, he was probably 2 or 3 years younger than me, but he had some beautiful cars. He'd come up with, Corvettes, things like that, driving. He always had this big guy, wavy black hair that was with him. And finally one day, my cousin asked him, "What's this guy's always with you?" And he laughed. He said, "Well, my dad got him out of prison. He was in prison for murder. My dad got him out, and he's my bodyguard." Says he has a lot of connections with organized crime. And my dad just figured that it was worth having him because if I ever got kidnapped, this guy could know how to get me out. But they had to live like that because of all the wealth that they had, all the things that they had. But from what he talked about his mom and dad, they weren't happy people. All that wealth didn't make them happy. Now you can be rich and wealthy and I think be happy. I think we've had, some examples here. HEB, Howard Butt, he used to give away 90% of his salary and keep 10%. Of course, when you've got salaries in the millions, you can still live off the 10%. So he
wouldn't started out like that.
Huh?
It may not have started out.
Oh,
like that.
I'm sure it didn't. Of course, I remember the story about a guy that came to his pastor. This guy, when he was young, he promised his pastor, and there's having Bible study, he promised his pastor, he said, "I'm always going to give it at least a tithe to your church." And over the years, though, he had progressed. His business had gotten really big, and he was making big bucks. And he came to his pastor one day and said, "Pastor, do you think I could kind of cut back on that a little bit? I mean, this is going to be a lot of money." The pastor says, "Well, no, you made a promise to God about that." But he said, "I tell you what we can do. We can just pray that the Lord will cut your salary some so that," oh, no. So, Ecclesiastes is going to go on with this. He said, so whether you, one of the good verses that reminded me of was over in 1 Corinthians 10:31. He says, "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God." And I think in the end, Solomon would have just said, amen. Amen. So we're gonna keep looking through the Ecclesiastes for the next couple of weeks. And I think if you noticed, if you have a quarterly, we're not following the order in the quarterly. We're following the order on that green bookmark that you're given. So with that, Jeremy decided he wanted to do Ecclesiastes first instead of Job. And I think he gave us a reason in the email about that, but honestly, I don't remember. Robert, do you remember what?
They're all.
They're all, okay. I don't remember what the reason was for that. I'd have probably done Job first just because it's the oldest book anyway. And in a sense, I think it almost lays a pretty good grounds for then coming to study Ecclesiastes. But the powers that be wanted us to do Ecclesiastes first, and I'm not too worried about it. They're both they're both good wisdom books. So next week, Robert's going to be teaching one, and it's going to come from Ecclesiastes 3, chapter, really verses 1 to 15. And if you look at the first part of chapter 3, I think that's a part that's, there's a time to be born and a time to die, and a time to plant and a time to pluck up. That's what was planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up. I think they've even made that into plaques to put up. And certainly there are some times appropriate to do things. Huh?
And did a song. A song.
A song?
Yes.
I don't know the song, I don't think. But I'll take your word for it. There's a lot of songs I don't know. A lot of songs. Just as we were coming in, what's the song that was come on when we were pulling in the parking lot? Huh? Maybe that was the one. I like all those old hymns. I miss some of the hymns. Hope we'll get back to some every once in a while, but there's the one about he paid the cost, he died on a, well, that's, when I was in seminary, I had I did preach out at the Tarrant County Rehabilitation Farm. And it's mostly alcoholics and drug addicts and things that they found on the street, and they put them down there, and some of them were sentenced there by the judge, and some of them they just picked up. And this one old man had been a deacon in a Baptist church, and Roy Fish had been a pastor of that church many years ago. Dr. Roy Fish was the head of evangelism department at Southwestern Seminary in Fort Worth. And I told him about that old man, and he said, well, he used to be a deacon in the church that I was pastor of, and he's a talented artist, and he played the piano and wrote music for people like Gene Autry and Roy Rogers, and he played with the Pillsbury Light Crust Snowboys out of Fort Worth on the radio for years and years and years, and he got to drinking, and he just crawled in the bottle and couldn't get out. And one of the songs that the old man played for us one time out there, and I don't remember all the tune to it, but one of the parts that kind of stuck to me, he says that he paid the cost, he died on a cross, and all for a hobo like me. And it's just it was a Western type song, but those words have always kind of stuck. I wished I could have gotten a copy of the whole thing. It'd been kind of neat. He had all that music, and he'd been married and had a couple of 2 or 3 kids. Of course, his wife had divorced him and everything, but he was he'd still kept writing music and putting it in this old Foot Locker trunk. And he said when he died, that Foot Locker trunk was going to his kids. And he was hoping that maybe they could get some of that music published and make some money off of it as kind of an inheritance from him, because he didn't have anything else. But he's a good old man. He could also play the piano well, he just very, very talented music. And the lady that came out and played the piano with us, sometimes the 2 of them would get on the piano at the same time and play together. And whoo, they could make some pretty sounds. But I guess pretty good example for the Ecclesiastes. Lord, thank you for the day. We thank you for the lessons that we can see and learn from your word here in Ecclesiastes, that really all these things we accumulate, really nothing. They don't bring satisfaction. They don't bring us happiness. They don't bring us fulfillment. because that's only found through our relationship with you and our Savior Jesus Christ. And we just thank you for him, and we thank you for all that you've done in our lives. And we just thank you for the material possessions that you do provide for us, that we can eat and drink and live in a good place. And we just continue to praise you and thank you for that. We thank you for this church and building and all that we've got here to meet in. Your people, we just pray that you'd help us to be faithful to take care of it and get it all paid for and reach people in this community out here and see more people brought into your kingdom. We just pray for that. Help us to have soft, tender, attentive hearts to people's needs, that we might help bring them to you. And we just ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen. Y'all have a good week. Hopefully by midweek, we're going to start having warmer, drier weather.
How are you? Oh my goodness.
Well, but there's a hog that you got doing all you got to do is have good weather.
Well, my sister said that you may have to just take some of this to develop and not tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 years.
And sing rock. Thank you.
I hope you can read this.
Okay, well, that's why I was gonna do it.
Yeah, you've got 3
I'm
more.
meeting the butlers. They invited me to.
Hey, Joyce, can you unmute? Can you unmute?
I just did.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, how was the volume from the lesson today?
No, I couldn't hear. That's why TD left. He couldn't hear
Okay.
it at all.
Is that typical, or today was more that way?
No, just today.
Okay. Okay. So I think we'll have to adjust the microphone in the classroom. I think that's probably the issue.
We've never been able to hear what people say out in the classroom.
You could or could not.
Could not.
Okay, yeah.
You know, I mean, we can kind of hear a little bit out in the classroom, but not that much.
Okay, we'll try to adjust the microphone for next time then.
And today we ended up not being able to hear Will, especially when the refrigerator turned on
Oh,
or the
well,
air conditioner came on.
I wound up getting my earplugs and plugged them into the computer, and for whatever reason, I don't understand all the difference in the systems, but it worked to do that. So
Okay,
We
Okay.
had,
I'll get mine out and have them ready.